Hello and welcome to camp. My name is Zero and today's course is going to be on Friday the 13th low percent. Now there are a lot of different ways you can run this category. You can keep all counselors alive until day 3, you can use different starting setups, you can do cabin fights instead of path fights, really whatever you're most comfortable with. For the sake of this guide, I'm going to be covering the fastest route that I found, which is Chrissy and Mark against Jason, and only using path fights. Now the reason I kill off the other counselors is because Jason won't run away if he has 7 bars of health or less remaining, or if you have 2 counselors or less. This cuts a lot of time off your run. Now as far as Jason himself goes, he does have 32 bars of health every day, and 5 rocks will take away 1 bar, so you'll need to hit him with 160 rocks per day. Jason will regenerate any partial bars of health he's lost after an encounter, so say you hit him 9 times and your counselor dies or he runs off, he won't be losing another bar of health the next time you hit him. You'll need to connect with another 5 rocks to take that one away. Now because there are multiple starts that can work for low percent, learning how Jason moves around the map is very important. If you know where he's headed or you know where to meet up with him, you can save a lot of time. Luckily for us, Valientlink does have a guide that shows how Jason moves around the camp, and that will be linked to in the description. I'd also like to thank Valientlink for allowing me to use the images on that guide, and for letting me add some marks to show the starting points and the directions that Jason's moving in. So now let's take a closer look at the pattern Jason will follow around camp. Jason has 2 routes that he follows, Route A and Route B. First we'll be taking a look at Route A. Jason will start at either point A or point B on the map, and he'll follow the route marked by the arrows. He'll stop in any of the starred large cabins, or any of the numbered small cabins, where he'll attack a counselor if they're inside. He follows the path to the left side of the lake, attacks the children, and leaves the lake on the right side after he's done with them, and then he switches to the other route. If he is coming out of Route B, he'll exit the lake on the right side, head north, and then he'll go onto the outer loop and around the map. If he's not coming out of Route B, Jason's most common starting point seems to be at point B, which will be around the path leading from the outer loop into the cave loop. If you don't hear a buzzer right away, but one starts going off after about 18 seconds, it's very likely he'll be attacking a counselor in the upper right corner of the cave loop. If Jason does start at point A and there's a counselor in the top right cabin, the buzzer will go off almost instantly. The one thing I have noticed with this start is that if you follow the method of killing off the useless counselors so you only have 2 left, Jason will leave this cabin and continue on the route after a few kills, so you're going to end up either having to chase him down or try to cut him off. There are also 2 places on the map where Jason will move to the left, inside the cave loop, and then once he arrives in the lake loop until he gets to the dock to attack the children. That's about all there's going to be for Route A, so now let's check out Route B. For Route B, Jason has 1 start point, and this is the one that'll give us better setups because the starting cabin is in a more centralized location. Jason starts at marker A, and if there's a counselor in cabin 2, the buzzer will go off almost instantly. From there, Jason follows the outer path all the way around until he gets to the top entrance of the North Forest, attacking any numbered small cabins with a counselor, or checking out any of the starred large cabins. He cuts through the forest, goes into the lake loop, and makes his way to the left side of the lake where he'll attack the kids. From here he switches back to Route A. Now if he's coming out of Route A after attacking the children, he moves towards the South Forest, cuts through there from north to south, goes to cabin 2, and then continues along the route. I don't know the specific paths Jason follows if he's in the forest, so I unfortunately can't explain how he moves in there. I just wait for him by the path leading in and out of the forest. That's going to be it for Route B. Next we'll be looking at the best counselor setup that I found and how to determine what other setups can give you a good day 1 time for low percent. Now that we know how Jason moves around the map, we're going to look at the counselor setup that we want to run low percent. This isn't like any percent where we have 1 starting point. I've found 5 or 6 different options that will give you a good time coming out of day 1. One thing to note is that any start with a buzzer within the first few seconds will work as long as there isn't a slow counselor in the upper right cabin of the cave loop. If I see one of them in that cabin, I'll just reset because it takes them so long to reach the other side of the camp that you're already out 30 to 40 seconds before you really get your run going. For the sake of this guide, I will be using the setup that I found to be the fastest, and it also happens to be one of the more common ones that appears, so that's a good thing. You'll note that I also do pick Mark instead of Paul, Debbie, or Laura to begin with. While it can save a few seconds to pick one of those three, I do like Mark just in case a potential any percent run hits. So if you're like me and start with Mark, you want him to start with the cave in the background, but off in the distance. If you pick Paul, you want him by the lake with the mountains in the background. For Debbie, she should also have the cave in the background, but it'll be a lot closer to her because she starts in the cave loop. Now if you're picking Laura, she should have the forest in the background. Chrissy will have the lake in the background, with mountains on the left and the forest on the right, and George is getting attacked in the bottom middle cabin, so we really don't worry about him. From what I've found to this point, this is the ideal setup for day one. It is definitely possible that there's a better route out there, but it's something that I haven't found yet, so this is the one I use. So with that, let's move on to day one. Alright, so here we go. We've got Mark, we see the cave in the distance, and we hear the buzzer. So when that happens, I immediately switch to Paul. And if we see Paul in the over with the mountains in the background by the lake, we know we're good. So then George is getting attacked in the bottom middle cabin. We find Jason. What I choose to do is I like to hit him 5 times just to get 1 bar of health gone. That overall will save 20 hits on day one. It's not huge, but it does make a little bit of a difference in terms of time. Then we know with this seed, Debbie is going to end up over by the cave. If you take some hits from zombies on the way over, it's not that big of a deal. You're going to be killing the counselor anyway. I like to try to have full health just in case I end up in a situation where I'm missing hitting him with rocks. But they're all good again. So then we just kill Debbie. And now we're at the best part of the run here. Killing Laura. She will start on the east side of the map. So we just run her to the left until we see a small cabin. Then we get to watch Jason punch Noodles in the head. There we go. And now she's dead. Now with this part, we're actually not going to switch to George. We want to pick Chrissy. It might be faster to loop through the forest. I don't know. I've never tried it. I do not know the forest routing that well off the top of my head, so... What we're actually going to want to do when we get here is we're going to switch Chrissy with George. This will help set up day 2 and day 3. There we go, gotten our 5 hits. So next, Mark is not going to do anything else on day 1. We're going to switch to Chrissy and just head to the right, and there's Jason on the path. So now what we want to do is get to one side and just kind of keep going back and forth. Hit him as many times as you can before he arrives. And because we did those 20 hits with the rocks earlier, we only have to do 140 before day 1 is over. Now there are a few things you need to watch out for on day 1. One of them is if you mistime your jump here, his axe is generally throwing slower. And I've jumped into that axe so many times. Another one is sometimes he will kind of speed up and follow you a little bit. And he can run basically right into you and throw an axe right as you're landing. That is one way you can take damage. Other times he will back up a little bit as you're jumping and you'll fly right into him. But overall, once you kind of get used to the day 1 fight here, it's pretty safe. There's not a whole lot to it. It's just repeating this. The reason I like to count my hits, obviously I'm not counting them right now, but if you count your hits and you've got enough health, when you get them down to like 20 hits or so to go, instead of jumping over and dodging, you can just sit and mash, and that'll save a pretty decent amount of time. Like there, I tried to get a little greedy. Took an extra hit. Now one thing you can do if he starts following you, if you turn quick and hit him with a rock once, I don't know if he's actually going to do it for the rest of the day here, but if you hit him with the rock and he's moving a little faster and following you, he will stop to throw an axe generally. You can jump over that and he'll slow down after, and then you can just get to the other side and continue your attack. There we go, and I did that completely wrong, but if you do that right, you can jump right over it. Jason generally does not like to run straight into you, so if he gets close, he will usually back off and throw an axe, unless he's basically chasing you, like I like to call that rage mode. As you can see there, instead of running right into me, he backed up and threw an axe. That's what I was talking about there, with him just kind of following you and running right into you. For day 1 and day 2, I'm going to try to show the full fight just so you can see a little bit more about what they look like. There we go, so you hit him once, he'll throw the axe over your head, and there he is, that's day 1. So now we're at day 2. Mark is generally going to be starting somewhere around the cave, but that's really not that big of a deal. In every run I've done, he's always ended up over by the lake when day 3 starts, and that's really all that matters to us. The important thing is going to be Chrissy. If we did our day 1 setup right, she's going to be here in this cabin on the right side of the map, and that's where we want her to be, because as soon as we start, we run just to the left, and there's Jason. So now with day 2, we're going to be doing the same basic thing we did on day 1, just kind of jump over his head, go back and forth, and hit him as many times as we can. Generally, that's going to be 3 per cycle if you're lucky, or if you're getting all your timing right. What we want him to do is there where he starts running towards you, backs up a little bit and throws an axe. That gives you time to get ahead of him. If he chases like he just did there, and he's moving fast, you can jump once partway over him, that'll make him throw an axe, and then you can jump safely over him again. When he's in the axe throwing animation, you don't have to worry about him doing a backup and jumping right into him. The backup is going to be the most dangerous part of day 2. You'll take a lot of damage, I think it's 7 bars maybe, if you run right into him. It's also very important to try to get out of day 2 with both Mark and Chrissy still alive. You're going to want that backup counselor for day 3 just in case something goes wrong, because he's a lot more difficult to deal with on day 3, and day 3 is also a lot more time consuming. Now there is one other thing I'd like to show here if we can get him to do it. That's when he's following slow like that. If he's following you slowly, you generally don't have to worry about him doing a backup. You can just jump right over his head. It's only when he's moving at a faster speed that you have to do the half jump like that to try to get over him without him doing a backup. And this is really all you're going to be doing in day 2. It's harder than day 1, but once you get the hang of it, it's really not that bad. We just got to get in our 160 hits, and then we're on to day 3. So now we're in day 3. We have both of our counselors left and all is well. This is where knowing how Jason moves around the map is really going to come in handy. Mark and Chrissy will spawn in different cabins around the lake on this day. I'm guessing where they spawn depends on the exact spot that you beat Jason in on day 2, but at this point that's just a theory, I really don't know for sure. I've seen Mark in the bottom middle of the map, like he is right here. Other times I've seen him on the right side of the lake loop. I've seen Chrissy spawn in the upper left cabin by the lake, the upper right cabin by the lake, or the upper right cabin on the outer loop. What we want to do on day 3 here is cut off Jason around the point where you can take the path from the outer loop into the lake loop. I prefer to wait for him to come to me on the outer loop there, because sometimes he's managed to slip by me while I was waiting around by the large cabin or trying to just camp the large cabin, trying to go down the path and get him earlier. But he always ends up appearing and he's never just ran by if I just wait by that path. There is one other minor element of RNG to this day. It doesn't happen often, but sometimes when your first counselor dies, or if they die, the second one will have moved to a really bad location, and that'll make it a lot harder to catch Jason around the northern forest before he gets in and attacks the kids. And if he attacks the kids, you're either stuck trying to do a day 3 cabin fight, which is a lot more dangerous and a lot slower, or you've got to wait for that extra minute for him to kill the kids so you can meet him by the eastern bank of the lake. So with that, let's get started on the actual day 3 fight. So now we're starting day 3, 160 rocks away from victory. Ideally you'll have 2 counselors left just in case things go terribly wrong, which does happen a lot on day 3. We want to pick whichever counselor is closest to the upper right corner of the map. In this case we have Mark in the bottom middle and then Chrissy in the upper right by the lake, so we'll be going with her. The spot we want to cut Jason off at is just to the right of where Chrissy is on the map on the outer loop. So from this cabin we head to the left, avoid the zombie, go down the path, and then we hang out here between the large cabin and that path going back into the lake for about 10 seconds and Jason will show up. I like to try to hit him a time or 2 before he runs onto the screen. So it looks like he's starting in rage mode. How I like to deal with rage is I try to time my jump so the axe is going right under me just before I land, then you can quick turn and get a hit in. Sometimes it can take 4, 5, even 6, or as you can see, a lot more hits to break him out of rage. Other times he'll break out of it if he hits you. But we want to try to get him into a good pattern here, which is this one, where if you stand still when you jump over him for a very brief moment, he'll back up and throw the axe, and then you can just continue this as long as possible. We don't want him in rage. Sometimes he'll just follow you, or he can just basically keep running into you over and over again, which will really quickly end your run. One other thing we have to watch out for on day 3 is his backups, where instead of backing up and throwing the axe, he just backs up, and then your timing gets off, and he'll throw an axe right into you as you're landing so you can't avoid it, or he runs into your back like he just did there. So this is basically how the day 3 fight goes. We continue this as long as possible. If you die, hopefully you've got your backup counselor there so you can get the clear from there. And yeah, this is what we do. And that'll be all for this course. If there are any questions or anything that needs clarification, please let me know in the comments or find me on Twitch or Twitter. I hope this helped make low percent a little less crazy. I know when I started running this category it definitely seemed overwhelming, but now that I'm used to it, it's really not as bad as I was expecting it to be. Once you get enough practice and can start reacting to Jason without thinking as much, it'll become a lot easier. You can start stretching longer and longer fights together until you can regularly get the win, and that's when you'll start seeing more completed runs and hopefully better times. Thank you for watching, and happy slashing!